When she was born, is that when you found out?
A few hours after Norah was born that she may have had Down syndrome. Oh my God, she's going to be different, she's going to speak different, she's going to look different, she's going to be bullied. What will happen to her when we are not there?
But are you alone?
Even Vivek, the first thing he Googled was successful people with Down syndrome.
What actually causes neurodivergence?
They have the knowledge of like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, sensory processing, they get that.
Expect the worst.
Your definition of success and happiness has changed.
How great is a child's love? It's how unconditional.
Fully unconditional.
For mothers, it's like an identity shift, right? Like your whole world changes.
We all were grieving in our own way, but nobody showed me their grief. It was just so amazing that it felt like you're a part of.
You take your time. I'm going to
Sorry.
cry if you cry. A few years ago, I met a mother through a close friend. She had a 2-year-old daughter who was diagnosed with autism. I remember that little girl didn't speak very much. She didn't respond to her name the way the other toddlers did, and she loved spinning around and around in circles. But what stood out to me wasn't how she was different. It was how her mother saw her. There was no fear. There was no shame. There was just a sense of quiet strength and very evident, fierce love. And that encounter really stayed with me. It made me realize how little we talk about the parenting journeys that don't follow the so-called normal path. The term we now use, neurodivergent, refers to people whose brain functions differ from what's considered typical. This includes conditions like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and Down syndrome. Globally, more than 1 in 100 children are born with some form of neurodivergence. In India alone, over 30,000 babies are born with Down syndrome every single year. And yet, parents raising these beautiful, unique children often feel unseen, unsupported, and overwhelmed. And that is why today, we want to open up the space to share stories, facts, and hope. Hello and welcome to All About Her, a space where we have honest and meaningful conversations about women's health, wellness, happiness, motherhood, and self-care. And today's episode is about a parenting journey that often goes unspoken about, but holds extraordinary strength. We're talking about raising neurodivergent children and understanding the love, the resilience, and advocacy that comes with it. So to help us navigate today's very significant conversation, I'm joined by 2 incredible women whose lives, their work are truly a testament to the strength and heart it takes to raise and support neurodivergent children. First up, we have a mother whose journey has touched thousands. Her writing, her vulnerability, her strength, I feel they've really created a safe and an honest space for many. She's the mother of Norah, a bright, beautiful girl born with Down syndrome, and through her storytelling, she's helped shift how the world views difference. So please welcome Pooja Khanna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Soha.
for being
You've
here.
always been a supporter. So,
Arey.
right when Norah was like a
I know,
toddler.
and I was just saying I miss her, I miss you. I'm so happy to see you today.
Same. Thank you.
And to help us understand the framework of neurodivergence through a therapeutic and developmental lens, we have someone who's worked with countless families and children across the spectrum. She's the clinical director of the Pollyanna Practice, a multidisciplinary therapy center in Mumbai, a speech, language, and feeding therapist who supports early intervention of children and advocates not only for children, but also for the mental health of parents navigating these crucial early years. She also collaborates and works closely with schools to support neurodiverse children. So please welcome Ridhika Shah.
Thank you so much.
Firstly, I want to say it's so good to see you because I don't know if you know, Norah and Ninna were in school together in play school many years ago, 6 years ago. And I have memories of Norah being friendly, being a risk taker compared to, for example, Ninna. I know we're not supposed to compare children, but I remember her being brave in so many ways, even with the little things that you expect from a toddler or a 1.5-year-old, things that perhaps Ninna was hesitant with. You know, I observed Norah to be kind and friendly and just, I haven't seen her in years and I miss her and I miss you. So it's really nice for us to get together like this. I wanted to start with just taking you back a few years to the beginning when Norah was born. And I don't know actually when you found out about a diagnosis. So can you tell us a little bit? And if I at any point ask you something that you're not comfortable with, then just stop me right there.
Okay. Perfect.
So when she was born, is that when you found out?
Yeah, so our diagnosis was at birth. We found out a few hours after Norah was born that she may have had Down syndrome. It was not confirmed until we did the tests.
Right.
The doctor, so basically Norah was born late in the night, and it was like, and I was heavily pregnant, but I was only like 7 months, and I already had like an incompetent cervix, that's what they call it, and I was in complete bed rest. So going through those, months of not doing anything, and then finally my doctor said, that night you could go out for your dinner. And I was actually looking forward to that dinner, and I was like getting cramping all day, and I'm like, maybe these just Braxton Hicks and it's fine.
Right.
And I remember my mother-in-law telling me that, why don't you just slide by the doctor once, just like swing by and see what's there and then go for dinner.
Right.
And there I am, little bag dress, ready to go for dinner, entering the ER of the hospital, and they like check and they're like, I'm sorry, you're in active labor, you can't go anywhere. And I'm like, no,
my dinner reservation.
Yeah. So, and then all they had to do was cut my cervix from under, and then she was...
He's like, all they had to do is cut my cervix. That's all you do. Chop, 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 chop.
Because literally I was fully dilated because I was going through that the
And you
entire
were in pain.
day. Yeah, but I was ignoring it. I mean, I realized my threshold for pain is something that I don't realize.
Right.
So, yeah, when she came out, and there's a lot, like there's so much going on when you're giving birth, right? Like there's this whole team around.
Yeah.
And of course, there's Dr. Nozer was my doctor. So there's music going on. Yeah. And I'm like listening to Sheryl Crow, and I'm like pushing.
Right.
And then suddenly there's like silence. I mean, there's music still, but it's all very deafening suddenly. Right. And I'm like, okay, faces suddenly look different.
Right.
And my first, my first question to the Dr. Chittal was, because he was a pediatrician, is everything okay?
Yes.
And he said, yeah, don't worry about it. Why don't you hold her? And then we have
Right.
to take her to the NICU because, we need to check her. She's prematurely born. And then, and that was my first, or actually my second. My second thing that, like something's not right.
What was your first?
My first was when I was pregnant, and Norah was like, we have to do the NIPT test and the
Yes.
blood test when you're 3 months pregnant. And I got the reports. Everything was fine. And I'm like, And I was talking to my mom-in-law, and she was like, I told her, I was like, what? Maybe we should just redo the test for Down syndrome. None of the reports said anything otherwise. There was nothing. It was just like a gut instinct.
Really?
Yeah, it was just intuitively. I felt like, And she's like, how everyone just puts that feeling, oh, you're just like over-imagining because, like there's nothing wrong. We don't have anything. This, like for generations in our family, there's like dur tak nahi hai.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, maybe, like I'm just being that paranoid pregnant lady.
Do you know where that came from?
No.
No.
I have zero idea. It was just a feeling.
Right.
And I called my doctor and I spoke to him. And he's like, don't worry about it. You're okay. Because
Yeah.
I was 33, 34 and that's okay. It was not even, and I had no pre-existing conditions, nothing in my family suggested otherwise. When Norah was born and that happened, and we were like, okay, that also was my second thing, okay, something's not right. And the next day, I walked into the NICU, gave Norah skin to skin, we were waiting for the doctor to come in. He was taking some time, so we walked out, we were discussing names, and I was like, well, I was in bed rest, like I was completely resting, so I get to choose the name. We're like, fine,
Right.
you win.
Surely you've had this discussion before, not at that point after she's born, no, about who gets to choose the name and what the name is.
We're like debating between two names.
Right.
So I was like, why do you even get to do that? All you did was just give me the sperm. I did the heavy lifting.
Right.
So I get to pick.
Right.
So yeah, and then we were discussing, and I'm like, she looks like Norah. Norah means light.
Yeah.
So I was like, I feel like she carries that light within her, and that's something which I felt when she was born.
Yeah.
So, and then we walked, the doctor came in, Dr. Chittal came in, and Vivek was ahead of me. He went in, and then he had this conversation with him, like maybe it's 20, 30 seconds before, and he looked at Norah and said, I think she may have Down syndrome. Vivek, this is what I'm suspecting. And he was like, you know what, maybe just get Pooja as well into this conversation. And I was just right behind him. I remember Vivek coming to me, holding my hand and just being like, don't worry, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And when your child is just born, she's in the NICU, I'm thinking of so many things, and she's prematurely born, I'm thinking of so many things that could have gone wrong.
Right.
But never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that this could be it.
Yeah.
Like, and then we went. And I think everything that he said after she may have Down syndrome, I think I just blurred. Yeah, it was just a blur. It just felt like a nightmare, like come alive. And Then post that, I think, we had to tell it to our family, and they had their, of course, we all were grieving in our own way, but nobody showed me their grief. And I think that was the biggest support I got, because, just they saw me crumble, apart from me going through my hormonal changes, my body breaking, leaving me in, like, just keeping me stranded, and the pain. I think they all were like, okay, what is the next course of action? Even Vivek, the first thing he Googled was successful people with Down syndrome. Right. That was his first Google search. Right. And I didn't even think about anything like that, right? And then he started showing me things. He's like, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? Look at these people. Right. I'm like, why are you even looking at it? This is what he suspects. We don't even know. Let's just do the test first. Yeah.
He's like, people process things so differently, and I feel like a lot of men tend to be very solution-oriented. Yeah. They're like, okay, let's solve this. Whatever's happening, let's find, what things are going to be like, and sometimes different people process it differently.
I was in denial, and he was like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? And he's like looking at that, and he's like, and then there was a show called Born This Way that's an Emmy-winning show. They do it in the US, and they weren't really showing it here, but there were like clips and pieces of it on YouTube. So we started watching that. I was in the hospital for like 7 days, so that's all I did. Right. Like watch episodes and bits and pieces. So at least that gave me some kind of a hope, like, you know what? It's not as bad as I expected it to be, or not. And also because it's the unknown, right? So you expect the worst. Yes, you expect, you're like, oh my God. I went on from, oh my God, she's going to be different. She's going to speak different. She's going to look different. She's going to be bullied. How is she going to, like, what will happen to us? What will happen to her when we are not there? I mean, it was just...
I think that is your body's reaction, though, is to prepare for the worst possible scenario, so that you can then, you get ready for battle, and then you can handle what you hope is, like you prepare for the worst and expect the, I've forgotten the saying. I bet nobody knows here. What is it? You prepare for the worst, and you expect the worst. You expect the best and prepare for the worst. Yeah. Thanks for all the help.
And I did not, for the first 2 weeks, I didn't want to look at anybody in that, because I detached myself, and I'm like, I don't belong to this community. I don't want to speak to anybody from this community. I stopped even following regular people with neurotypical kids on Instagram. Why me, and why is your life better than mine? I don't want to see your life. I don't want to see your life. So I got to that part where I didn't want to.
But that's pretty isolating.
Yeah. But at that point of time, it was like hard for me to process anything. So.
And your husband was there. It must have been challenging also then for the two of you, because as it is, I find that when you even, as you said, is the right word,
neurotypical and neurodiverse.
So I feel like even parents of neurotypical children, when a child comes into your life, it is like they say, one life ends and another life starts. It doesn't change your life. And that creates stress and challenges for any typical relationship. And I imagine this would have been that, plus perhaps something different.
I think for him, it was just that he gave me the time and space that I needed to process it. He's like, while he was still doing his homework, because he was also grieving. He just didn't want me to see it at that point of time. Of course, we processed grief together also. But at that point of time, he was like, I can't put my grief on with you, because you're still learning how to process. And I think it's very typical, right, of men to be like, I need to take care of the fort. I need to, I need to handle this.
Yes.
So they go in that kind of a zone. I think my family was amazing. Like, they were like that. They were the ones celebrating Norah. Like, they were going through their own phase, but like, we need to celebrate. They were the ones who put in balloons everywhere.
So who was there from your family at the hospital? Or
my mom-in-law, my father-in-law, my mom, my dad, my sister-in-laws called from the States and Toronto, my cousin called from London. Everyone was so excited. Like, everyone was like celebrating and sending me like, messages, like long messages of forget what everyone thinks. We are a family and we accept and, welcome her. And it was just so amazing that it felt like you're a part of.
You take your time. I'm going to cry if you cry, and then we'll.
I didn't know I would cry.
No, that's okay. I mean, I cry.
You're reliving that.
I'm taking you back, and if you don't want to go there, tell me else we want to go there. But I'm smiling listening to you and just thinking
it's a good thing.
It's so incredible. Like, we don't even recognize support, and how much of a difference it makes. And so many people, I feel, don't have it. And that's why I think that value, we were talking, of course, about creating a community, and the whole idea of doing this episode today was for me to understand how much support exists actually. Because a lot of people might think we follow your journey, we know you personally, some people follow you on Instagram, so they might feel, okay, this is a brave journey, but are you alone in this? And you have professionals helping you, you have people helping you personally from your family, but how many people are really empathizing with you, connecting with you, sharing with you? And that also I want to come to later, because there's so many questions that I want to unpack. But first I want to, in terms of family, I'm so happy that, you know, and I of course watch you and your husband all the time. And I see them, you know, singing songs, making music together, your extended family as well. And that is amazing. It's really amazing.
So, it was just, I mean, I think because I had a village from the beginning, that is my own family, and then my friends, they all got together, and I think that was my biggest support system, like having people around me who didn't really care about anything else but me. That, you know, like your well-being. And also gave me the space to have my darkest thoughts come out and not judge me for it. Like, that was so important. And I remember talking and having these conversations with my mom and mom-in-law, and I remember Norah just being there. She was like an infant, right? And all of these conversations, these dark thoughts that are coming out, I know she's listening. And yet, I still believe, like, all I got was love from her. And I'm like, you know, when I look back, I'm just like, how great is a child's love? It's how unconditional.
Fully unconditional. It's amazing. So the first question that came to my mind, of course, is, of course, when I became pregnant also, we did these tests, and they did tell us that these tests are not 100% accurate. But can you tell us what are the tests that typically one does to test for neurodivergence, and how accurate are they?
So neurodivergence actually cannot be tested, you know, in the womb.
That is also my first question is actually, is neurodivergence diagnosed in the womb? Or, and I know, okay, let's start with the question of what is neurodivergence and how does it differ from being neurotypical?
Sure. So you've heard the words, there's neurotypical, there's neurodivergence, but it's basically how a person experiences the world around them, how they respond to it, how they process all that information coming to them, how they communicate with that world, right? So neurotypical is what society has laid as like the average norm of how someone will respond to, you know, the world around them. And neurodiverse are, you know, people who maybe their brain functions a little differently, but different is not like a deficit. They just communicate differently, they respond differently, they process differently. And it's basically just understanding that neurotypical, neurodiverse, that our brain has these differences, and every brain is diverse, right? So that's how this, you know, term was really coined in terms of neurodiverse. I think it started with like the autism spectrum, but now it's with any brain that processes information a little differently than what you would expect your average brain to do. So that's neurodiverse and neurotypical for you.
And this would relate to, for example, as you said, autism, Down syndrome. What are some of the other?
So autism, ADHD. Sensory processing difficulties, dyslexia, learning challenges, all of this. Basically anywhere where your brain responds a little bit differently, or communicates differently, or works differently, or functions in a different way. All of this comes under the neurodiverse bracket.
And you said that we cannot diagnose neurodivergence in the womb, but does that also relate to Down syndrome?
So again, so syndromes, we were actually discussing this, right? Like syndromes, there are a few syndromes that you can actually catch early on. So you did a few tests, right? Earlier on in the pregnancy. Which ones were they that you had to do?
NIPT, and there was one more.
So some of these tests, they help you detect these genetic conditions, the markers earlier on, but sometimes it gets missed out, and that's what happened in your case.
I wanted to ask you, Pooja, you said, of course, that the doctor said that there's a chance that she has Down syndrome. After that, there were tests. And what were those tests?
So we confirmed that by doing something called a FISH test. So that's the test that you do to confirm. They do karyotyping of the child, and
what is
karyotyping is, again, they check your the chromosomes, and to realize, so the way
it's a blood test.
It's a blood test, yes. And that's when you do the karyotyping, and then you do a FISH test. So in the FISH test, they did for trisomy 21, that's what Norah has, the scientific word for Down syndrome. And then they also check, what it really means is that on the 21st chromosome, Norah has an extra one. So which makes it, instead of 2, we all have 2, she has 3.
Right.
So we all have 46 chromosomes, Norah has 47. And that is why that's trisomy 21.
I see.
Yeah.
So that is what the doctor tells you.
Yes.
But at what point did you as a mother become aware of any differences?
I think as soon as she was born, because it was put into my brain, so I just conditioned that way.
Right. So then you look at her.
Yeah, so every time I looked at her,
Yeah.
I didn't look at her as a child. I looked at her as a syndrome. I looked
Right.
at her as somebody who has Down syndrome. So I didn't really see the child.
Right.
It took me a while to see the child.
Right.
Like to
What
see
is
her.
a while?
It took me around 6 months to, and also because as she started, connecting with me, I actually realized this is a person.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just something that I needed to do to fix. Like
Right.
it becomes like a problem.
Right.
I need to fix this solution.
Right.
Forgetting there's a person
Yeah.
or there's a soul in it.
Yeah, but I feel like, sometimes that applies to parents in
mothers,
general as
yeah.
well, because we are also going through just, like, it took me not 6 months, but it took me a good few weeks to connect with Inaya. And Kunal said, I can jump in front of a bus for her. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find out, what this connection is. And I was talking to Inaya about this also, how different people form bonds in different ways and it takes time. And now, of course, it's a whole different story. But there was a journey. And there were many times when I was quite clinical about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for mothers, it's like an identity shift, right? Like your whole world changes.
Yes.
So I think, and everybody processes it differently. It doesn't only have to be with a child who's maybe showing us neurodivergent traits. It's just with any child that's born to a mother. I think for them to find that connection, their purpose of life may have suddenly changed in their head. So a lot changes, I think.
You work with a lot of neurodivergent children
Yes.
and parents. So we understand that in India or in a city like Mumbai also, there are others.
Yes. Yes.
So if you can tell me just typically if there was one thing that is memorable, a particular incident that was memorable for you that left an impression with you from all of your work over the years.
So honestly, for me, every mother and every child is so different and so unique, and what they come in with, their strengths are so unique that it's so hard to pick one, because every single day I'm finding and I'm meeting parents who are, and you'll see they're like we were discussing this, right? Indian parents are like fighter parents. They'll come and they'll be like, we need to figure this out. And they've all gone through this narrative because they've gone through their period of grieving, because in their head it's a problem, and then they've come back to be like, but now what should we do?
Right.
So like you said, lots of people are very solution oriented, and I've seen parents go to the world's end to make things happen for their children. They've fought with schools, they'll come to therapy, they'll show up every single day. I've had parents who've literally come to therapy every single day, gone back home, done what they need to do, come back. A lot of times then this also means that your life changes, right? So many times the conversation is also about, I know that you're doing this for your child, but you have to think about yourself also. And they'll be like, yeah, we're figuring it out. But in that moment, so many parents, their whole world becomes, how am I supporting my child? And I think it is so amazing to see how, they're ready to be empowered. And they're there being like, okay, show me. Tell me, let me do this for my child. And I think that's why every story is so different. But just for me, every parent I work with is just such a special connection I have, not only with that child, but also that parent.
Yes.
That then for me, it also becomes like how do I see them through this whole process and make sure I'm setting them up for success at every point,
Right.
Then it also becomes a very personal thing.
You said that there's a period of time where parents take their time to
Yes.
come to terms
Yes.
with what they have to do. They try to find solutions, and then they come to you. So typically, at what period do they come to you?
So, to answer your previous question, I also wanted to talk about how do you come to know, right? So for Norah, it was a genetic condition, it's Down syndrome, but neurodivergent traits actually start showing up in early childhood, because it's based on how your brain is developing, and while that happens, I think in that first 12 months for a lot of children on the autism spectrum, you'll start seeing signs. So you'll start seeing, language delays. You'll see that there is that social piece that is impacted, that social reciprocity is in there. It might just be like you don't get that smile, child's not responding to their name, they're not really, they're hearing things, but they're not really processing the things you're telling them to do. You'll see repetitive patterns emerge, and so
Such
in
as,
that,
like, if you've
so repetitive
patterns.
patterns could be just me doing that same activity over and over again, making those same sounds again and again. And some of these are like normal developmental traits, but sometimes if persistent patterns emerge, at least in today's day and age, I think parents, at least in urban cities, have become a lot more aware. So I think their first point of contact is always their pediatrician. So they'll go to their pediatrician to be like, can you tell me if I need to do something about it?
And sorry to interrupt you, typically at what age of the child's development would this be for them to look for these signs?
You can start seeing this as early as 12 months or even before. And, in that first 1-2 years, that early, age is where you start seeing a few of these symptoms come up. For things like dyslexia and all of that, it's much later in life, right? When the academic challenges come into place, that's when it happens. You will see sensory and motor challenges come in a little bit earlier in life as well.
What are some of the sensory challenges?
So you'll see that in terms of just regulating myself, being able to handle transitions, moving from one space to another, even something as simple as tactile and touch, being able to deal with different kinds of touches, being able to deal with lots of sounds. You'll see those things come up, and that's when a parent sees a few of these red flags and goes like, wait, something seems a little different, let me do something about it. They usually go to a pediatrician. No one really directly comes to us, it's first the pediatrician. What I've seen, honestly, it's changing now, but a lot of times pediatricians unfortunately will tell you, wait for a few more years, wait for a few more months, see what see what happens, and you've experienced this as well.
So they ask you to, in your case there was a diagnosis, but I'm saying if it is behavioral, are they asking you to wait to get a diagnosis?
Yeah.
So they'll tell you to wait often, but I think now the awareness, and I think pediatricians are also a little bit more proactive. Then the person you're referred to is your developmental pediatrician, who's looking at all these developmental patterns that are emerging, your behavioral patterns, and then will then refer you to a speech language therapist or an occupational therapist. So this is how it kind of goes, the hierarchy, or the process in which the sequence in which this kind of follows. We've also seen that sometimes parents are very intuitive, so they'll realize, wait, my pediatrician's telling me to wait, but I see something's wrong, or maybe I'm not understanding what's happening. And especially when you feel like when these traits start emerging, and you see that they persist, and you see that they're coming in the way of your learning, they're coming in the way of how they're communicating with you, how they're engaging with the world around them, is when parents should typically be like, let me follow my gut. Let me just go and, go to a developmental pediatrician, or maybe reach out to, a therapist to be like, is everything okay? Or is there something I can do to support my child at this point?
Right. Pooja, I wanted to ask you, because you said, of course, in the beginning when Norah's diagnosis came, it changed the way you looked at her for a period of time. But were there specific behavioral speech of course comes later with young children, but things that made you notice, as opposed to someone telling you and having fed it into you, things that you noticed for yourself? And what typically happens, because you referred to a pediatrician, is that we ignore pediatricians, we turn to mothers and say, do I need to go to a doctor? My child has a cold, she's been coughing for a week. Really, the pediatrician comes much later. So in this case, who were the people that you bounced your fears, your anxieties off?
So again, because I was connected to my friend who was in Toronto, who has a daughter now who's 25. She was the one who reached out to me. So 2 weeks later, when I was ready, I reached out to her and we started having these conversations. And she was the one who empowered me, ask me whatever you want. There is no question wrong and there's no question too dark. Tell me, spill out everything. Let me be your sounding board. And that's what she was. And I was like, why did you do this? How is your life now? Do you even have a life? What is it like? And then of course, she got me back to the now and not the future. It's she kept bringing me back to the now. Right now, look at what you have. Okay, right now, let's begin with what do we need to do first. And then she sent me videos and pictures of her own daughter at that age. And then she said, you know what, start early intervention.
Yes.
And I've not heard of that, right? Because that is something that's not barely spoken about.
No, especially if you're saying that people ask you to wait, that sounds like the opposite of early intervention.
Correct. And so I was like, what is that? It's like we started, and she was 18 then, and 18 years before they started early intervention. So clearly they were far ahead of the...
And they're in America.
Yeah.
Where we're assuming things are a little more
Yeah,
advanced.
so we started therapy with Norah when she was 3 weeks old. So, you know, we did that, and when I told Dr. Chittal that, Dr. Chittal was like, why are you doing this?
Right.
You know, why don't you just wait for a few months? Just process your feelings, enjoy your child. And my friend said, you know what? You don't need to do, you can still figure all these things out while doing this an hour a day.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, fine, it makes sense.
Right.
You know, because I'm still going to be processing my feelings. At the end of the day, I would give myself like an hour or two to process my feelings, all my deep dark thoughts.
Yes.
And I would remove that time. But during the day, I mean, she was still just sleeping. So just feeding, sleeping, pooping, burping. So I was like,
Same.
you know, we have that.
time.
We have that time to do that. And again, because I had the support of my family, they all figured out, put our brains together, where should we go? What should we do?
So how did you know where to go?
So again, you know, I spoke to people around, and we were guided that way. And then my mom asked people, oh, you know, is there a center around? And I think, you know, Indians, we are so good at jugaad and figuring out. And, you know, every month you ask one person anything, 10 people will come and help you.
Yes.
And that's how, and previously in our own building, mom's building, there was an occupational therapy center, and that shifted. So the whole building got together to figure out where has that center shifted. And then that's how we started.
Right.
So I think it was just, and then we were guided to developmental pediatrician to understand what the development looks like.
Right. So what is a developmental pediatrician? Either of you.
So a developmental pediatrician is someone who specifically looks at all the developmental factors, right from the sensory motor system to the language and communication to the social emotional, and then helps with a comprehensive evaluation of, you know, where the child is developmentally. These are the guys who can then help with giving you your diagnosis. They're the ones who will create a plan and tell you that at this point, you know, your child will benefit from, say, a speech language therapy or an occupational therapy, and this is what you need to do. So usually with neurodivergent traits, you'd want to go to a developmental pediatrician because they have the understanding of how the child develops and what they need to do at this point to support them.
So that might answer a future question of mine, which was that who would you go to get an accurate diagnosis?
Correct.
Would that be the developmental
Yes,
pediatrician?
a developmental pediatrician. A pediatrician can also give you a diagnosis, but I think a developmental pediatrician will be able, just because they're the experts, will be able to help a little bit more with that. Sometimes even neurologists help with diagnosis. So it's between the three of them. They have the knowledge of like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, sensory processing, they get that. So they're the ones who will then support you with understanding where your child is at, understanding their strengths, understanding what areas need to be worked on, and then guide you.
Before I come to you, Pooja, I just wanted to ask you a question connected to that, which is what actually causes neurodivergence? If you can shed some light on that. For some people who might think that it is genetic or it could be caused by environmental factors.
It has a strong genetic predisposition. When there is a neurodivergence that comes up, it could also be impacted by like prenatal factors or just like having a stormy neonatal period as well, low oxygen, or you know, some kind of conditions, infections that the mother goes through just before giving birth. So basically anything that kind of comes in the way of the development of the brain could lead to neurodivergence, which is why you can't tell it from before. You can't tell when the child is in the mother's womb. It's later, as the child starts developing, as the child starts getting exposed to the world around them, is when you'll see these traits develop.
Right. Because I feel a lot of people also get into a sense of what could we have done differently, and sometimes there's nothing that you could have done differently.
Sometimes, you know, early childhood traumas and things like that, like, you know, parent intervention or just parent care early on could impact it in some way or shape it a little bit more in terms of like difficulties in attention or emotional regulation or anxiety, you know, those kind of things, or how the brain responds to situations like this. But mainly there is like a genetic predisposition to this. So
We touched on a few of these things, Pooja, where you said when you became aware of certain, again, I'm not sure of the right words, but developmental milestones perhaps that Norah was not hitting. There were a variety of tests that you did, and we were talking off camera of some of the, because you referred to organs and low tone, low muscle tone. So can you take us through like the battery of tests that you had to do to ensure where she was, to know where she was at?
Yeah. So when she was born and we got the diagnosis after doing the fish test, we got the official diagnosis. They did the hearing test, because again, all your organs are affected. All your organs are much weaker because of trisomy 21. So they had to check her ears, we had to check her heart. She was 3 weeks old when we took her to a cardiologist and pediatric cardiologist. And they checked if her heart was strong or there are any, you know, defects or anything. And then we did a sonography of the stomach. These are basically any congenital issues or concerns that could be, that we needed to address, that come along with Down syndrome.
Right.
So once they were ruled out, that's when we focused on development. We were like, okay, now since these are ruled out, we now focus on her muscle tone. And that is then we started occupational therapy when she was 3 weeks old. And that's usually play, right? And also for me, it was maybe therapy for her, but it was also therapy for me, because I needed to know what it's like to be with her, because all I saw was a diagnosis. So when I saw somebody else playing with her, I'm like, how did they not see that?
Yeah.
What do they see differently, and how are they seeing it
yeah.
differently,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because, and then my first thing was, I think, more for me than for her, that the therapy.
Tell me that first activity that you guys did together. What was it?
Again, the things that they tell you is like play sound, music, like for tracking, so that they're able to, basic early milestones like cause and effect and all
I
of
feel
that.
like music is such a vital part of her. Every time I see her, if she's in the car or she's at home, there's music playing. She's, you know, she knows the lyrics.
Yeah.
So music is important.
Music was a very big part of, for me, for healing. And I guess it became a part of her to relate to the bond that we have. And then I think just became the background score of our family.
Right.
Music. So I think that we connected slowly from the last hour of venting, or the dark thoughts slowly started changing to, you know, looking for good things. Oh, today something good happened. Or so started changing to gratitude. And then from gratitude, it started changing to joy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, it was a very organic. It wasn't like intentional or anything. It was very organic. So because I went through all my stages of grief, I think that end of acceptance, when it came with all of these profound thoughts that, you know, I needed to go through all of this to be able to experience the joy in what lies ahead.
And as you said, that transition happens to joy, but it doesn't have to mean it's like a blanket, everything is amazing.
No.
There will be moments, there will be days, you know, there'll be wins and losses along the way. Tell us about some of these small wins, something that may not seem like a big deal, but it's actually like it's a win.
So, you know, we were helping Norah. So it was my sister-in-law's wedding, and it was happening in Spain, and Norah was going to be 8 months old, and she had still not learned how to sit. And she was the flower girl for the wedding. And they were sitting in this carriage, and there were 2 kids. It was Norah and another kid. They were going to be dressed, and they were going to be carried in the carriage. And I was like, all I need her to do is sit. Can we please work on that? And I was like,
and that is a muscle tone thing.
Yes. So you're able to hold your core, and that's how you sit.
Yeah.
So I was like, is that all? I know we can prop her, but it'll be so nice to see her carriaged away with that other kid who is the same age as her and is already sitting and is already big and stern. And I'm like, and right before we left for Spain, there she is, she started sitting. And I'm like, yay!
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I think that for me was a win, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like telling him, you know what happened? She sat. She sat. Even though it was for like 3 seconds, she sat.
Yeah.
Like we did it.
It's huge.
Yeah. So I think everything that led up to a milestone for her, say even standing, and you know, the biggest part was she realizing that, because again, you know, she started doing things much later than what kids usually do. So her brain was processing it at a very different way. Like she was able to understand what she's doing.
Yeah.
So when she learned how to stand, she realized that she's doing something different.
that's
Like,
nice.
you know, and usually
So
when
she's
kids,
also celebrating that with you.
Yes.
It's not like, what
So-
are you all
and
taking videos of me for?
She is, and she's looking at herself doing this, and she knows that she's not able to express it verbally, but she's like giving me those, like, and she's screaming like I'm doing something different.
Yeah.
And even the first time she learned how to walk, when she was walking at 25 months, and then she started walking, and she's like, okay, this is new. Like,
Yeah.
she's actually doing that, and she's looking at me. She's like, do you see? Like,
Yeah.
she has that expression.
Yeah. So I just want to understand, to underline, so, you know, as you said, like neurodivergent and neurotypical, to know that that extra challenge, typically a child walks at what age? By one. And
Norah walked at 2.
At 2.
Yeah.
So we're talking about that. Those development milestones, again, I don't know if that's the right word, that I know most parents, for some reason, especially mothers, are obsessed with and constantly comparing, you know, that we're all guilty of. Did you put any extra pressure on yourself for Norah missing those milestones?
So initially, yeah, I would feel bad because I feel like, look, even when we used to come to Todd Den, kids were walking, Norah was crawling.
Yeah.
So I feel like there was a sports day, the kids were running in the race.
Yeah.
So they made a new race where everyone will crawl because Norah was crawling. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, I had my feelings, but also because people were seeing it differently, people were including and making different ways to accommodate and make sure that Norah was included. I felt those were the early, you know, empowering wins for me.
Right.
Like, you know what, people are okay with doing things differently. So
Right.
I think when that happened, it just helped me get there better. Like,
What about your, you know, there's apparently, I'm learning about it and reading in books, there are different parenting styles, you know, where they're permissive, and there's helicopter, which everyone knows about. And helicopter, I've been told, is not just something that goes around all the time and you're hovering around your children, you're actually rescuing your children all the time. And therefore, you know, taking away the ability for them to rescue themselves. And therefore, it is not necessarily the best way of going about things. Do you have a style of parenting?
so for me, what I learned was that there is no vision board for parenting.
Yeah.
We all come with these grand plans, and obviously for me, I know how badly things can change and then how beautifully things can emerge out of something that I felt was the end of the world. So I decided when Norah was very young that I'm going to take each day as it comes.
Yeah.
Because we have so many things going on in that each day that I don't get time to think beyond that.
Yeah.
And also, I think being able to be there present when she's actually doing the things that she is, I'm actually able to enjoy those small wins.
Yes.
Because I'm actually able to see the work that she's putting in for months together to be able to do what she's doing for that hurrah moment for us.
Yeah. So there's so many things, because you referred to your day is chaotic. So I want to know what a day looks like. We talked about helicopter parenting, and you told me about your style of parenting. But one thing that comes to mind before I come to you, Ridhika, is that it's a balance between being there for Norah and allowing her to speak up for herself.
Yeah.
Because I'm struggling with that. You know, I want to do everything for her, and I still feel like they're vulnerable, and she may have the skills, but she's not utilizing them all the time when she should, and I want to step in all the time. And I know in my brain I'm not supposed to do that because I'm not giving her opportunities to do it, and how else will she learn? So are you faring better at that than I am?
No, I'm also struggling with that. So the thing is, because for us, communication is a big part, right? So there are days when Norah is able to communicate very effortlessly and tell me her needs, tell me how she's feeling, and even like things that her emotions.
Yes.
So this is something that we're teaching her. So she'll tell me, Mama, today in my brain, I'm feeling joy.
Right.
Or like she loves Inside Out.
I know, I was about to
So yeah, so she actually this is how she actually views her brain. She's a visual learner, so when she saw that, she actually thinks that everyone lives inside there and they all play a part and they come out.
Yeah.
So that's why I ask her, and then so some days that's good, and then some days I have to give her options of where I feel that she may be coming from, and then I help her with her words, like, are you feeling this?
Right.
Or even if I may know the reason, I'll have to like give her options and say, is it because of this or this? So I have to, with Norah, we have to model it a lot for her.
Right.
Before she starts getting into her own and starts expressing herself.
So how do you step in, and what is your guidance in situations like this?
So, you know, in situations like this, my first go-to is like just observe her, like listen to her, see what's happening with her, and understand when you understand what's happening instantly, very intuitively, you'll know what I can do, how I can scaffold for her, how I can support her, what strategy can I give mom to use in that moment. You know, so many times we need to step back and we need to observe instead of going into that situation and then just like talking about it. And I think with Norah specifically, stepping back, giving her the words, giving her that space, also understanding what triggers her, you know, and helping her feel successful in that moment really helps. So I think with mom, it's always about like observe, understand what needs to be done, then use a specific strategy or a scaffold, give it to her, and the end goal should be Norah should get out of this feeling very successful, you know, and then automatically, of course, then mom feels good about that situation as well. So I think this entire piece, it's about empowering the parents to empower the children.
Yes.
When you let Norah out into the real world, she's going to struggle with how to regulate in that moment, how to navigate those situations on her own. So it's constantly about observing, understanding what works best, and then giving them the strategies and the scaffolds for the same.
And she's already now away from you for many hours in school.
Yeah.
I mean, school may not be the real world because they're still protected, but you know, she's managing herself.
Nora has a shadow. She has a shadow teacher who works with her.
Yeah, when you said Nora has a shadow, yeah, she has a shadow teacher.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Mainly because we needed her to be understood, and she needed the support system in school, because that's where school may not be able to extend their support as much. So we got in a shadow in place who specializes in understanding her needs and also being able to provide the same kind of information at her level that's being provided at school, and also simplifying things that she may
I have
need.
2-3 questions about school that I will come to. Can you give us just an example of how early intervention has, you know, reaped a beneficial outcome? You know, perhaps in the case of autism, or if anything that you can tangibly share,
Sure.
so that it brings it to life.
Sure. You know, we had this child who was diagnosed with autism, sensory processing difficulties, also had apraxia of speech, which is basically motor planning difficulties, right? So a lot of times, a lot of these things come together, you know, it's not just that one thing. Autism is also such a broad spectrum. Even if you look at Down syndrome, right? Like yes, there is a syndrome, but there are so many other, like some child might have a strength could be just being able to express myself. For another child with Down syndrome, maybe expression, auditory processing is very tough. So it's everybody comes with their own profiles.
Living Down syndrome in a different way.
Yes, yes. And the same with autism, the same with a lot of these conditions that also then come, you know, there's bits and pieces of everything, right? So we've worked with so many kids as early as 12 months, 15 months of age. And I do remember this one child who came in with like a severe apraxia of speech along with like sensory processing.
What does that mean?
So apraxia of speech is, imagine you're thinking the word in your head, but you can't say it out. So it's almost like I've understood or registered the word, I've planned it in my head, but I don't know how to motor plan my mouth to say the words.
Right.
And I remember this parent, and you know, this child still comes to us, and he has come every single day because this child could not even control phonation. So for me to create the sound, the child didn't know how to get it to happen. So imagine a child sitting there with additional other difficulties, challenges that they're facing, and you can visibly see it on their face. They want to say the word, but it's not coming out.
So this child is non-verbal?
No, now he's fully verbal. He goes to a school, needs the support now, you know, speaks in full sentences, has conversations. Of course, now we're working on like the to and fro conversations with like peers. We're working on like group work. We're doing those kind of things, but therapy evolved for him. But he's come in literally every single day, and it started with just working with like small sounds and just teaching him how to control his phonation, and now he's here where he is today. So for me, early intervention is about, and the mother is so empowered, right? Like she came back to me every day being like, will he talk?
Yeah.
And I was like, but today we're just working on this.
Right.
And you know, now when she sits back and thinks about like, oh, but I used to ask you, will he talk? And
Yeah.
today, of course, the concerns are different. Now it's like, will he ever have friends?
Right,
You
of
know,
course.
so, but to see, and this is just one story, and there are hundreds of stories like this. So for us, early intervention is something we really advocate for. and we tell them don't wait. Like if you know that there's something, come get the support, learn how to get, like maybe we'll send you back being like try this at home and come back in a few months. But early intervention means you're setting your child up and your family up to be so successful and to feel okay, to feel confident, and to not live in that fear and doubt of the unknown, right?
Today, Nora's how old?
Today, Nora's going to be 8 now in July.
She's going to be 8. And what is your typical day like?
So during school hours, she has school. We leave early from school, and we usually first, like in the afternoon, we have therapies. Then after therapies, we usually...
So to just tell her, what are those therapies?
So we have occupational therapy, we have speech therapy. We have speech therapy 4 times a week. We have occupational therapy.
And what is occupational therapy?
Occupational therapy is where she's learning to be interactive in a group, and she's communicating how to play or how to regulate herself.
Adults?
Kids.
Children.
And these are kids in her class. Like she'll play with other kids who have different diagnoses, but they all come together to play as a group, because when they go back to their own schools, they should be able to associate with their friends. And how do I interact? Or how do I initiate a conversation? Or if someone is playing, like I want to join in, what is basically equip you with the tools that you need to be able to go to school and or to be around friends or to be social. So she does that. And then we do 1 sport a day, because that is something which she enjoys and is also good for her.
Yes.
I think it helps her get stronger.
Yeah.
And it's something that she has now identified herself as. She's like, I'm going to grow up and be an athlete.
Right.
This is her current thing.
Right.
And I think she finds joy, because I think now it's become her strength. So to swim, to
She's a mermaid.
Yeah, so she loves that. So to be able to swim, to be able to do calisthenics or OCR or gymnastics, all of that. So I feel that's her thing now.
I wanted to ask you about labels. There's in society lots of labels for lots of things. A lot of people are fighting to get to a particular stage, and some people feel labels are helpful sometimes because it gives you access to resources and draws attention to something which otherwise may not get attention. What are your thoughts on labels and the stigma that comes along with the labels?
Labels are a heavy, at least in our society, it comes with that very heavy connotation, right? Because parents are then grieving, going through that whole like fear of the unknown, also worried about what others are going to think about their children, what their family is going to go through. But I honestly feel like labels, it's just a word, right? It's a term. It's not defining who you are. It's just going to describe what you have. Like we were talking about it that day, and it could be like you have an allergy. Right? It's just a way to describe something that you are finding challenging, or that happened to you. But I think if you look at labels in the right way, it's going to be the first way or the first gateway to open up more resources. Labels also, if you use them the right way, help with transparency, which gives you the support, right? Yeah. It helps you understand your child a lot more, to know what I can do with my child to support my child. If I'm open about the label, the child will get that support in school, in terms of their therapies, in terms of everything in society. But unfortunately, there's that stigma that is attached to labels. And I think Pooja said something very nice to me, and it stuck with me, where she said that be open, and it's okay if there's judgment, because judgment is a conversation starter. Yes. And she said, and that really stuck with me, where she said that, when you're open about it, they'll say what they have to say. They might judge you, but it's also a space where you can start that conversation. And I think parents like her are bringing that change on now, which is so important. But it's a double-edged sword, because then we have parents who will also tell us, but my family, like if they ever found out, it would be so tough. So I think the narrative needs to change.
If they ever found out means that there are people who come to you who have not disclosed.
Yes,
the fact that their children have
so many
a diagnosis.
parents don't want to get a diagnosis. So many parents don't tell their schools about diagnosis, but then the schools are like, how do we help the child? We don't know what the child has, and we don't know how to support the child. So many parents don't tell their own families because people will talk. And I just feel like it's so limiting, because it's taking you away from actually supporting the child. It's taking you away from actually bringing the troops on to be like, come on, let's do this. Right. So I think the change is happening, but I think more people need to speak up about it and be okay with labels and say that, yes, my child has Down syndrome. Now let's do what we need to do to support the child.
So with each episode that we're doing, I have a friend, Niranjana, and she asks a question which is usually an assumption, and then we ask our guests to either debunk that assumption or to validate it. And she said that, is it still true that parents of neurodivergent children are still refusing to acknowledge this diagnosis, and they say, no, my child just has a quirk. So that still happens.
It does. It's unfortunate. I think that, they come with so many insecurities of their own, just dealing with like family situations, the society we live in. So it does happen. And that's why we need to start conversations about this, build more awareness in our society, being like, this neurodivergence is not, again, a problem. It's not a deficit. It's just different brains functioning differently.
All of this, like having a team of the therapies, also expensive, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
We expect a lot from our schools when it comes to raising children. We do our bit as parents and as families, friends and peer groups, and then the school is an integral part of a child growing up. Social skills are developed there, learning how to share, academic skills are developed there. How has your journey been with schools in India especially? Norah and Inaya started out at Todd Den, but was Todd Den your first choice for a preschool? And how has your journey been after that?
So we were rejected by quite a few preschools also because just based on the diagnosis. Because I remember some preschools asking us, what is her IQ? I was like, she's 12 months old. How am I supposed to know a child's IQ at 12 months? Yeah.
Yeah, nobody
And,
asked
or
us
how aggressive is Down syndrome? I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, these are answers I didn't know. Didn't even pop in my head, and I didn't know that I had to have answers for these questions. And then obviously Todd Den happened to us, which was amazing because they were more than happy. They were like, we see every child for who they are. We want to get the best out of the children because this is a preschool. We want to teach kids how to learn through play.
Right.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. And Norah is no different. Norah is also going to learn through play. That's our strength.
Right.
So please get her. And any support that we need from you, we'll reach out and ask you. But we're supporting all children. All our kids at this age have needs and they need to be supported. So we're very well equipped with that.
Right.
And I think that turned around even in terms of what that community meant for me in that sense. My first approach was through like a preschool.
Yes.
I faced rejections and then I found a community there.
Yes. In her school, are there other neurodivergent children?
In Norah's school, that is the only active school that I have seen that takes every year, they take 2 kids who are neurodiverse actively. I mean, that's specifically reserved for neurodiverse kids. So yes, she may be the only kid. She's the only second kid with Down syndrome in the entire school. One is already just graduated and she's the second one. So they may not have a genetic condition, but they do have neurodiversity in terms of ADHD and autism.
Right.
That have been pre-diagnosed and come to them.
Right. Ridhika, I wanted to ask you, in your experience of Indian schools, how inclusive are they, and can you share some examples of schools and communities that have made some meaningful strides into this area?
So inclusion as a practice is now gaining momentum in India, honestly, in the last few years. And I feel like she said, there are a handful of schools in Bombay, and Bombay is one of your big metropolitan, urban spaces, right? That are now understanding inclusion, and like Pooja said, the intention is there. But of course, there's so many structures that need to be set up, and we're seeing the changes. There are a bunch of schools that are now creating structures. Step 1, just creating awareness, sensitizing your children, the parents, the teachers. Step 2 is then maybe having a special, like an enrichment cell or a SEND department to support these children. And it's just not that department, right? Everybody in school also has to be empowered to work with, neurodiverse kids. Then comes all your professional development and training the teachers how to actively, work with these children. Then comes all your collaboration. The school also needs to figure out structures and ways to collaborate with the team outside, because generalization, like that transfer, needs to happen. Whatever learning you're doing everywhere else needs to kind of come to school. So there are many steps, and I feel like every school is the few schools that are actually practicing inclusion are at different levels of those, of that ladder.
Right.
But the good thing is that there are schools now that will actively reach out to be like, we need to collaborate. There are schools that will be like, come train our teachers, support them with what they need to do in these situations. There are schools that are trying to create sensory smart classrooms. There are schools that are creating individualized plans for children so that their needs can be met. So it's changing. We're far away from it, but I think I'd like to see it from that positive lens of the change is happening. And I feel like as more schools do it, there will be more support for our children for all kinds of neurodiversity, because it is a struggle on an everyday basis. I'm talking to countless parents about where do I go for school.
What about your conversations with Norah and educating her as to who she is? Have you had those conversations? When did you feel like was the right time to have that conversation with her? Does she know that she has Down syndrome?
So we've always been celebrating World Down Syndrome Day every year since she was born. So as she's growing up, and this was the last year where we had this photo shoot with Nora and Zenica. Zenica is an adult with Down syndrome. And so both of them came together. We were like celebrating, music was on, we're taking pictures, then we cut a cake. And then she's like, now celebrations are in place. So she's like, what? That's when she asked me, Mama, what is Down syndrome?
Yes.
So I didn't even know when to get this conversation started, but because she brought it up, I found it as a great opportunity
And
to
this was
explain.
when she was how old?
She was 6 years old. 7 years. No, she just turned 7.
Yeah.
So 6 and a half.
This was
7.
okay, so this
Now,
is when she was
recently.
6.5 or 7 years old.
Yeah, so she asked me, what is Down syndrome? And I said, Nora, you're born with something that not many people have. It is something inside your body that you're born with. And I said, when you look around you, like Zenica has that. She is also born with that same thing, and then you are. And Mama, Papa, we don't have that. A lot of people around us don't have that. So it makes you very special.
Yes.
It makes you very different from Mama and Papa. It makes you very different from people around you. But because of this special thing that you have, it's like a magic power. It's like you have these magical powers, and you can only activate it every time you work hard. And these magical powers come to life, and this magic that you have within you, instead of telling her that you have to work really hard to achieve your milestones, I just tell her it makes you very hardworking.
Right.
And because you are so hardworking, you automatically activate these magical powers, because of which you're able to do these things.
Right.
So, and then of course, I showed her these examples. Like, it was the same, like a full moment circle where I was showing her successful people with Down syndrome.
Right.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I showed her like these adults who are like,
Yeah.
in like gymnasts, and like these,
Yeah.
like people who are in the film industry,
Yeah.
and all of these successful people doing very different things.
Yes.
And this is what I want her association to be
A positive
from the,
one, yeah.
like from the beginning, because if my association was positive, I may not have looked at Norah differently. So if her association is positive from the beginning, and she is empowering herself, and she knows that her entire village looks at her as this person who has this potential, and these are the things that she can achieve,
Yeah.
then all the negative things that are going to come her way later on are just going to be like, things that people say.
Yeah.
But Mama, I have seen that these are things that are possible, right? Because
Yes.
you develop that sense of self to a point where she's able to be like, okay,
Yeah.
people will say whatever, but this is my capacity, and
Yeah.
she'll stick to her lane.
Yeah.
So I feel like now that is the thing that we're growing. We're trying to have more interactions with people with Down syndrome. So I'm trying to get that consciously getting done, because I want her to be connected to her community.
And not feel
because
she's
the thing
so
is
special that she's alone.
Yeah, because the thing is that, she's only around neurotypical people all the time. So I'm like, no, but she also needs to be around people like her, who she will have this bond with. And the first time I think Norah and Zenica met, it was an automatic bond. It was just very unsaid, and I'm like, oh my God. And now I know there's another kid who she's younger than Norah, and the things that Norah used to do, now that kid is doing.
Right.
So when Norah sees that and how we used to correct her, now she's correcting that little kid.
Right.
And she's like very, very protective about her. But she doesn't know that she has Down syndrome. She just knows that we are very similar.
Right.
So she's found that space with her.
Is it safe to say that your definition of success and happiness has changed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I was broken down into pieces, rebuilt, and I think at every stage of her life, I get broken down and I keep rebuilding because at every level, acceptance is different.
Yeah.
I mean, at every level, it's not acceptance is not like a blanket thing.
Yeah.
That now I have accepted her for who she is, so that's it.
Yes.
At every level, I have to be like, this is how she is now.
Yeah.
I have to accept that. How do I learn to deal with that?
Yeah.
So I think that changes.
And
at
that I
every
think
level.
is motherhood, because
Yeah.
you know we have expectations from our children,
Yeah.
and then they're going to come around and turn that on its head and say, you might have had all these plans, but
Yeah.
this is me.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
then it's about that
Yeah.
unconditional love and acceptance.
Yeah.
So we're speaking about schools and the infrastructure that they're trying to create, the teachers that they're trying to get the right qualifications. What about Norah's peers? What about the children that she goes to school with? Have you had any observations as to how they interact with Norah?
I feel like children are so honest.
Yeah.
Like I remember a bunch of kids standing getting picked up from school, waiting at a carpool, and I was picking up Norah and I was leaving, and one of the kids said, "Why is Norah different? Does she have brain infection?" I love that. And the mom standing there did not know where to look.
Yeah, I'm sure. She was like,
And I was like, no, she just has a different brain. She has a beautiful brain which learns differently. But it was such a short conversation. I was like, oh, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah.
You know, like I wish that would have led on to other conversation. And there was another kid, when I used to volunteer in Norah's school, one kid came and asked me, why does Norah behave like a child? We all are the same age. I don't understand why she does the things that she does. She puts things in her mouth. Like, can she not understand that it's not good for her? And I said, you know, that's such a good thing that you observed about her. And you know what, maybe she likes putting things in her mouth because I think maybe that's how she feels safe. But you know what, I will try to do this at home with her. I will try to keep reminding her at home that it's not okay to do that. But you know what, I am not in school, you are in school. So when she does that, can you be that friend to tell her in school that, you know, like, come Norah, it's okay, you don't need this to be safe, you're safe around us.
Yeah.
And also I said, you know, there are certain things that she may take longer to understand than you do because she learns slightly, she takes a little longer to learn certain things. Like maybe you're really good at some things and your friends around are still learning to do those things. Just like that, Norah is learning some things which you're already good at. So like communication.
Right.
And from that, you know, that just changed the dynamics, how she saw. And from that day, she's always been around that friend that, you know, who look out for her.
Right.
And who's also told the other friends that, you know, if she needs help, this is what you need to do because this is what her mom said.
How sweet.
So that became like, and now she has like this 5 or 6 girls who are like, you know, just they know now Norah's like, this is Norah. There's no question about why she is. That's now they've accepted her for who she is. And you know, when she does some things, okay, Norah, they'll just like ignore it and like tag her along, pull her along. We don't need this. Or they'll have a conversation with her.
Yeah.
They just figure it out. I feel like they're so much better than adults.
I feel like we underestimate sometimes children's capacities to empathize and to nurture and that kindness. You know, I think it's there, and then maybe we do things to sort of strip away at it, and life happens.
Because we're conditioned.
And we're conditioned, and they're not at all.
Yeah.
They're accepting.
Yeah.
Last couple of questions. I feel sometimes perhaps there might be parents, again, of children with Down syndrome, autism, neurodivergent kids who may feel mentally or emotionally exhausted by the journey, but again, guilty to admit that. And what would you say to them?
So I think earlier I used to be bogged down and very mentally drained with what people around me spoke, how they viewed Norah. And that was such a big concern for me initially, that people shouldn't view her in a certain way and they shouldn't judge her. But, you know, I realized I was the first one to judge her.
Yeah.
And the judgment started from me because of ignorance. And judgment comes only from ignorance. That the stress that I went through was only because of ignorance. So the moment I empowered myself and I was able to look at Norah through a different lens, automatically my conversations changed. Yeah. And when those conversations changed, I started to feel better, and I started to see that conversations that happened with people changed because now they were viewing Norah through my lens.
Right.
Now suddenly what I said was their conversation with someone else.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, how much are they spending time with Norah? They're only looking at Norah through my stories or through my conversations. And if that is positive, or if that is somewhere where I feel that this is what she does and this is what we're doing, and it's changing the whole narrative around that, automatically it's empowering other people not to cross that boundary, or to be like, okay, this is what it is like.
Right.
And I think when the same thing comes about for mental health, that when I automatically start getting the help that I need, because I don't know how to see it through a different lens. Maybe I need help looking at it through a different lens. Maybe I need help for seeing it with another perspective because I'm too close to it. Nora needs therapy and so did I.
Yeah.
So we did that.
No, it's true. You said, I tell this to Ninna, we know the words. We say, what are the most important words? Help. To ask for help, to identify when you need help. And if you can do that, then it's only going to help you. Ridhika, how do you achieve a sense of balance between realism and optimism when talking to parents about long-term outcomes?
Even when we're talking about long-term outcomes, like we said before, what we really focus on is taking one day at a time, breaking it up into smaller pieces. Acceptance, like we're all saying, accept your child for all the strengths they have, leverage those strengths, actively work towards very consistently what what needs to be built. But what we've been very consciously doing is we've been trying to condition our parents, and like how Pooja said, change the lens through which they see their child. And it can be something as small as a hurrah after every session. We have kids now coming to, just the session will be over, but they'll come back for feedback being like, what's my hurrah for today?
Nora does that.
Yeah, Nora does that. And, just changing the way we're looking at what we're going through to be like, but this was my win.
And finally, just on a parting note, I wanted to ask you, what is one thing that Norah has taught you that you've not learned from a book or a textbook?
Just being present. Being present is time and over again. That has been my learning from everything. That be present, do what you need to do now. Also appreciate the struggle now, so that when you succeed, it's like you actually appreciate the process and you don't look at it as a failure. Yeah. And I think it comes so naturally to her, because I see kids who failure is a big word.
Yeah.
Like when I actually saw her comparing what success looks like to her in her head, it brings you back to reality that, oh, you know what, that is actually true.
That is exactly what is true, and that is what we need to be focusing on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I know I've taken up a lot of your time, and I feel like I really got involved in this conversation, but I know I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching this have learned a lot. And really, I think the takeaway for me was how much we need to focus on the small wins, how much we need to be present into the day-to-day moments, spending too much time focusing on the bigger picture. The context is so different from you as it is for me or a neurotypical parent. But I feel like the journey has so much that,
Yeah, I didn't even think that would be so similar, because when I'm
that
stressing out, you're like,
with.
yeah, but I did that too.
I stress and so I think it's a fascinating conversation, and thank you for sharing, and give Norah all my love when you see her.
Thank you for having us and having this big conversation.
Thank you.
You're always front and center, cheering loud and proud for her.
I will
So thank
always.
you.
And that brings us to the end of this wonderful episode of All About Her. Today, we unpacked what neurodivergence really means, and not just as a clinical term, but as a lived, hands-on experience for both children and their parents. Thank you so much, Pooja, for opening up your world to us, and Ridhika for guiding us through the maze with clarity and with compassion. To our audience, if this conversation helped you learn, reflect, or even just helped you feel less alone, then please do support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. And let us please keep having conversations that no one is preparing us for, because that is where the real understanding begins. And until next time, stay informed, stay healthy, and see you in the next episode.